Lijep pozdrav poštovani gledaoci, ja sam Haris Mrkonja. NBA sezona samo što nije ponovo počela nakon što je pandemija koronavirusa zaustavila sport, a samim tim i najjaču košarkašku ligu svijeta. NBA liga se vraća 30. jula u Disney Worldu na Floridi. Ko će osvojiti NBA naslov u najčudnijoj sezoni možda ikada? Ko će se najbolje snaći? I šta možemo očekivati u završnici od košarkaša sa ovih prostora? Na ova, ali i druga pitanja, razgovaramo sa Jaredom Greenbergom, reporterom i analitičarem na NBA TV-u, koji nam se javlja direktno iz babla u Orlandu. Jared, nice to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I know what a global game the NBA is, and it's awesome to see how big of NBA fans you have, and I know everybody's excited to get basketball back.
Now, I just mentioned that you're in a bubble and having to endure the misery of a hotel room. When are you getting out?
Well, I've got to say, listen, putting things in perspective, it's not all that terrible. I understand people around the world are suffering much more than I am right now. I'm here for the safety of myself and for everybody else. I have to endure 7 COVID-19 tests that all come back negative in order for me to be allowed outside of my hotel room. So far, so good. I've gotten 5 done. I've got 2 more to go. And then Wednesday, midday local time here, I'll be able to go out of quarantine and kind of explore the campus here. But even once I'm out of quarantine, there's still very restrictive rules on where I can go, who I can interact with, have to wear a mask anytime I'm outside of this room. So it'll be a unique experience. I'm excited to be a part of it just because, like I said, I'm happy basketball's back. I'm happy I still have my job. And I'm looking forward to being part of something that's historic. We've never had a season like this before, and hopefully we'll never have a season like this again.
And one of the positive news is that from the players and the teams that are in the bubble, there have been 0 cases up until now, if I'm correct.
Yeah, you're right. In terms of players tested inside the bubble, players prior to coming to Florida have tested positive, and then they stay home until they have the right number of negative tests before they can come back into the bubble. But you're right. So far, no positive tests. Hopefully it stays that way. I think that, you know, I would love to see the U.S. government look at what the NBA is doing as a model, because this seems to be a pretty safe place to be, where all of the precautions are taking place. As I said, the quarantine for everyone. Once you're out, wearing a mask, washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, and social distancing. We're really taking this very strict here because, unfortunately, outside of the perimeter where we are at Disney World, cases are exploding, and it's a very dangerous place right now. And I'm happy that the NBA and the Players Association and everybody inside here has taken it so seriously that hopefully others around the world will take a look at how we got this done. Yeah, it costs a lot of money to do it, but I think everybody's health and safety is worth that much money.
And with safety put up in place, we can finally start to talk basketball. Yeah. So here's my first question. Can we know, after all this time without basketball, how much rusty are the 22 teams going to be?
I think that is the multi-million-dollar question here, because, you know, I felt what was so disappointing to me when we stopped playing basketball on March 11th was how excited I was for the playoffs, because I felt like they would be so unpredictable. I was so excited to see some surprises come out of the playoffs. And now, almost 5 months later, I feel like I know even less than I did back on March 11th about who I should feel confident in terms of the teams. Yeah, we've seen some scrimmages being played, but that really doesn't show you much. I think, you know, we're going to learn a lot starting Thursday night to find out who really kept themselves in great shape. And I think a key factor here with teams is the chemistry of who gets along with one another. Because listen, you know, it's one thing to travel throughout a season with your teammates and be stuck with them in hotels every once in a while or on an airplane. But now you're stuck with them 24/7 for the potential of up to 3 months. If you don't like one another and don't enjoy one another's company, that may really show itself on the court. The teams that enjoy one another, like each other, and have that good chemistry, I think this atmosphere and this environment will bode really well for them.
So, but it's a particular season for another reason. There's no team that has home court advantage. I've seen like that being talked about on the Inside Guys with Ernie and Shaq and Charles.
My guys.
Yeah, the guys, yeah. We're going to be talking about them a little bit later, but how is that going to affect, or how can that affect an NBA season that is already unprecedented in the history of basketball, American basketball, NBA basketball? Can there be a team that is like a dark horse that can come from nowhere and go very deep into the playoffs or even win it all?
I think absolutely. I think you make a great point. You know, we just simply don't know yet how teams and players are going to respond to this environment. You know, a team like the Philadelphia 76ers with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons were one of the best teams on their home court this year in the NBA. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, they were one of the worst teams in the NBA when they had to play on the road. What type of team are they when they're on a neutral court here in Orlando with no fans in the stand? I think interesting for the LA Clippers, a team that if they're destined, like many believe they are, to face the LA Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, you know, Staples Center, where both the Clippers and Lakers play their regular season games, even when the Clippers are the home team, it's predominantly Laker fans in that building because LA is a Laker city. Here, if the Clippers are the home team, there's no advantage for the Lakers. I think that that's going to play a huge advantage. I wonder if some of the younger players are going to be maybe spooked a little bit by this atmosphere because they're not used to playing without any fans. Maybe the older teams will be more accustomed to, you know, blocking out the environment or not worrying about what's not there. But I think it's a great point, and it's going to be a great scientific study to see how these teams handle something so different.
Now, with everything that's been going on with the coronavirus and this huge gap that we had since March up until now, is there a possibility that this season is going to be viewed with an asterisk next to it, next to the winner? Because even when we had lockout seasons in the past, there have been some pundits, some analysts, some ex-players that they're saying like, yeah, but it's a lockout season. The Mavs won it in 2011 because it was a lockout season and Dirk Nowitzki and blah, 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 blah. Is there going to be such a thing in this season that has been something that we've never seen before?
I would argue that there should be an asterisk, and the asterisk should say, this is the hardest championship that's ever had to be won in the history of the NBA. I think the unprecedented circumstances that you have talked about make it incredibly more challenging than ever before to win a championship. I mean, think about, you had to go through playing 60 or so games, stop. You had to worry about real world issues, the health of your family, your friends, of yourself, of the community that you're in. And then all of a sudden you go into this unknown territory here in this, you know, bubble that we're in, and have to play basketball like it's never been played before. And these, you know, finely tuned athletes, I think basketball players probably right up there with soccer players are some of the most athletic, best athletes we have in the world. They're used to routine, and this is not to make an excuse for them, but it's hard to break habits and routines. And for a team to come together under these circumstances with all the totally valid distractions going on in the real world, the fact that they could win a championship this year, yeah, it better be noted that it's the most difficult championship that's ever been won.
So we're going to have like a dozen regular season games before the start of the playoffs. And a very interesting fight is taking place in the West for that 8th seed. Who do you think is most likely to get it? Because right now, as I see it, Portland has maybe the best team, but is still outside of the first 8 teams.
Yeah, Portland probably is the most intriguing team coming into all of this. They played all of the season prior to coming to Orlando here without Nurkić, who is clearly a top-tier center in the NBA and makes a big difference on that Portland team. They also played a lot of the season without a young up-and-coming star in Zach Collins. Those two guys are back with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. And I have to think if those four together, Nurkić primarily, being available to them the entire season, they're probably in the playoffs already. But now they got to fight their way in. And over these 8 games that they have to play, I give them a great shot here to, challenge Memphis. But I also am really excited about watching the New Orleans Pelicans because Zion Williamson is a young phenom. And we saw what he did in just 19 games, making the Pelicans relevant, giving them a shot to even be here. But the guy who's going to win Rookie of the Year is Ja Morant. He's got Memphis in the 8th spot. He's going to do his best to hold off all those contenders who are trying to get that last spot.
And now talking about playoffs, whoever's going to get that last place, the 8th seed, who do you see coming out from the Western Conference, which has been loaded for a number of years, and who do you see being the best team in the East to make the NBA Finals this year?
Yeah, as I said, I think this is totally unpredictable, right? Because we just don't know how these teams are going to respond. We don't know if injury is going to play a role because, players have had such a long time off. And let's be honest, too, we don't know if the coronavirus is going to have any effect or impact moving forward on any of these teams. So if all things are being equal and we look at it, from what we know on March 11th, the team I thought that had the best shot in the Western Conference was the Clippers. I think they're right there neck and neck with the Lakers. I just think overall the amount of depth and talent and versatility that the Clippers have with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and Patrick Beverley and now adding Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson. I just like them better, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Lakers are the team that comes out with LeBron James leading the way. In the Eastern Conference, the best team all year in the NBA has been the Milwaukee Bucks. They've been historically good. They're a really, really good basketball team. Giannis Antetokounmpo is well on his way to winning his 2nd straight MVP award, and I think they're the best team. But I would look for a team like Toronto and a team like Boston to give them a run for their money. I really like what those two young teams, they have a great core, great nucleus. They're teams that have great chemistry, and they've got young up-and-coming stars like Pascal Siakam on the Toronto Raptors and Jason Tatum on the Boston Celtics. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch all this play out.
So you touched on it earlier, a little bit earlier, the MVP conversation, and you're actually one of the journalists that gets to vote for the MVP award. As I understand, Giannis is your pick.
He is. To me, it's really not even an argument. I think LeBron's a close second. I think it's between LeBron and Giannis, but ultimately, listen, you can't take away from Giannis the fact that he's the best player on the best team in basketball. He's also, I think, Giannis going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think, and you look at the supporting cast of Milwaukee, there's really a lot of good talent. There's some good basketball players, and they have a great coaching staff and a great front office that has put this team together. But there's no question that Giannis is on a level that nobody else on that Milwaukee Bucks team comes close to. Yeah, they've got another all-star in Chris Middleton, and they've got some other good pieces. But ultimately, Giannis is the reason why that team is the #1 team in basketball. And what he could do to a team on the offensive end and the way he plays defense, I don't think there's any question he's going to win his 2nd straight MVP.
Is there any possibility that we could see another unanimous MVP vote?
I don't think so. I think LeBron certainly will get some votes. Just because, LeBron's had a great season. And then this is what makes it so hard being a voter. Because anytime you vote for someone, people think that you're voting against someone else. And that's not what's happened, right? I'm not voting against LeBron. Listen, you put somebody at #2 on your MVP ballot, that means they had a really good season. I just think Giannis had a better season than LeBron. But I think there are people out there who are going to make the argument that LeBron, you know, at his age, this many years in the league, leading the league in assists, leading the Lakers back to the playoffs for the first time since 2013. Yeah, he should be the MVP. And I don't think it's a bad argument. I just think Giannis has had a much better season from the start of the year through the end. And the other part of it, too, is, you know, I would argue that LeBron's got Anthony Davis. Giannis doesn't have anybody close to Anthony Davis on his team.
Yeah, and talking about LeBron James, we've talked about it. We've talked about it for a little bit a while ago. You're also going to be courtside for one of the most exciting games of the restart, Lakers Clippers.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, all those superstars over there, and what's it going to be like? Is this the game that is going to set the tone for who's going to get like the spot number one to come out of the West?
You know, I don't know what this game means for the playoffs or any of that. I am just so excited. I just cannot wait to start the season for me, just to restart the season for me with the top two teams in the West. A big rivalry, Lakers, Clippers, and think about all the star power. LeBron and Anthony Davis, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and, you know, hopefully Patrick Beverley's ready to play, and you get Patrick Beverley against LeBron, just like we did on Christmas. I'm so excited for this matchup. Again,
even
I don't
without
know that
the fans, because we've seen. I mean, soccer is the sport number one in Europe for sure, and we've seen a lot of games without fans, and it doesn't seem to be the same way when the fans are not there versus when the fans are there, making the atmosphere, hearing the roar of the fans. I mean, how we've seen some scrimmages going on in the past few days, but how do you think the players are going to react to that kind of atmosphere?
Again, I it's a great question. I think we're gonna find out, but I think we gotta have perspective on this, right? It's not a perfect scenario by any means. We would much prefer to have fans in the stands. To me, there's nothing like a sold-out arena with 20,000 fans for a great game. My adrenaline gets going, and I'm just broadcasting the game. But ultimately, I think we all have to have perspective and realize this is the best of a really bad situation, and we have to make the best of it. I think we're going to get a lot of people watching on TV, and I think people all over the world are really thirsty for basketball to be back. And to get these two teams on the first night of the restart, Lakers and Clippers, is a huge deal for us. And you're right, it would be much better with the fans. But this is what we have to deal with now, and I think we're just going to try and make the best of it.
Now, there are a lot of players in the NBA right now that come from the Balkans region, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia. So I wanted to pick your brain about some of them, and I'd like to start with Luka Doncic, perhaps the biggest name amongst them. How far can he lead the Mavs? Because the Mavs are also in this fight for a spot in the playoffs, because they're not, if I'm correct, they're not sure to making it.
Well, I think, you know, it would be a huge surprise if they didn't make the playoffs. I think Dallas will certainly make the playoffs. But I got to tell you how much I love Luka Doncic as a basketball player, as a human being. Being able to talk with him, he's so fun. And you know, people here in America have really taken to him, and he has become a superstar. I know all of you knew that a long time ago when he was just a teenager, you know, playing at a high level in the EuroLeague. But he is a special person. And I have him in the mix for the most valuable player conversation. I think he'll be on my ballot somewhere. He won't be number one or number two, but he'll be on my ballot somewhere. And, you know, I think he has taken a lot of people by surprise, because most of the time, you know, 19 and 20-year-olds don't come into the NBA and dominate as quickly as someone like Luka has done. So in this weird situation that we're in here in the bubble at Disney World, could Luka lead the Mavs maybe to the Western Conference Finals? Maybe. I wouldn't count him out. I think he's that good of a player. And Kristaps Porzingis has been playing really good basketball too. So if he's healthy with Luka, I think there's no question that they could make a deep run in the playoffs.
Next up, my countryman, Jusuf Nurkić. You've talked about him for a little bit. A guy that has been away from real basketball for so long, but has shown in these scrimmages that he can carry his load after that horrible injury to his leg. The last match he had, I think he had a double-double. What can he do to complement Lillard and McCollum and perhaps even Melo if Melo demonstrates that he's still the player he once was?
Yeah. Let me tell you, I was in the arena in Portland the night he broke his leg, and that was horrific last March back in 2019, and that was just an awful moment to see because he was having such a spectacular season. And you mentioned that he had a double-double in his last game, and what was great to see about that game as he played against the Toronto Raptors was Nurk getting back to being Nurk, as we call him here in America, because he was getting into physical battles with Serge Ibaka. He was, being a tough guy that he is. He's one of my favorite players to watch because he won't back down from anybody. He is so fun, and I think Lillard and McCollum need a guy like Nurkić on the court to help them defensively, to help them offensively. I think he's such a huge part of what the Portland Trail Blazers do.
Another player from my country, Canan Musa, who plays for the Nets, for the Brooklyn Nets at this moment, not getting as many minutes even before the coronavirus outbreak. I think he had 2 points in 7 minutes. Can he contribute anything more to Brooklyn to make them a more successful basketball team?
Yeah, if you're following the story of the Nets this season, it's been unbelievable how many injuries they've had and how many players they've had test positive for coronavirus. So they're not with the team. I think Musa, who's had flashes this year of showing that he can certainly compete, he's gotten into a lot of action. I think he's played about 35 games so far this season. I think the Nets are going to really lean on a lot of young guys to help contribute, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see him playing.
Next up, another big name, Nikolajokic, who came back to America a changed man, literally losing a lot of weight. Is there an explanation to why this sudden transformation? How far will Denver go in these playoffs? Here in the States, I don't know if this was happening around the world, but Jokic received a lot of criticism at the beginning of this season, back in October and September into November, about the shape that he was in and the level of basketball he was playing. It seemed as if he didn't take the offseason very seriously. And maybe he took that to heart, because as you said, he's transformed his body. And I don't know that anybody in the NBA was more productive during the stoppage of these 4 months, 5 months, more than Jokic was. He's the type of guy who every year is going to be in the mix for most valuable player, because he truly is a special individual. His talents, so far in the scrimmages, he's been starting at point guard. He's a 7'1", 7'2" point guard. And he has looked phenomenal. His body's in great shape. He is one of the most dangerous players in the NBA with the type of skills he has. I think Denver has as good of a shot as anybody outside of those LA teams to really make a run. And Denver's so deep. They're showing how talented they are. They've got a lot of young pieces. But it seemed like Jokic really got motivated during the stoppage and got himself in a position where he can make a lot of noise here down in Orlando. Now, Croatian guy Bojan Bogdanovic from Utah has already a spot in the playoffs. He's been improving season after season. I mean, what can you tell me about him? How does he function in this Utah team?
Well, unfortunately, he's not going to be playing here because he's suffered an injury. So he's going to be out the rest of the season. You know, they decided to make a decision to have him have surgery and move on without him. And I think, you know, unfortunately, with him not playing, you're going to see just how valuable he is because, you know, he is one of the great three-point shooters in the game. And you've seen this year, he's hit a couple of buzzer beaters, game-winning shots. You've seen how clutch he is. So I think Utah is going to miss him. And the good news is they expect to have him back for the start of next season.
So 2 more questions. Another big story besides the coronavirus and the basketball returning itself, and it's the fight for racial equality in the United States of America in the past weeks. Many of the players have decided that they want to use messages instead of names on the back of their jerseys. Some chose not to do that. What does that depend on, and why some do it and others don't?
You know, I think it's a part of what makes the NBA so special. Empowering its players, encouraging its players to utilize the platform that they have to speak on what's important to them. And there are some players who decided to put special messages on the back of their jersey, and others who feel that, you know, to create change, it's not just simply putting something on the back of your jersey. A guy like LeBron James, for example, who's not going to put a message on his jersey, has proven time and time again that he's, like we say here in America, put his money where his mouth is, whether it's creating schools here in the States, giving money to charities, or actually getting into the community and making a difference. LeBron has spent a lot of money and donated a lot of money to empowering people to vote here in Florida. And I think, you know, for some players, they feel like it's important to make that statement on the back of their jersey, while others feel like, you know, they can make a difference in other ways. And I don't think it's being seen as there's any right or wrong way to do it. I just think, again, it goes back to the NBA and letting their players decide how they want to handle this.
Just to mention that my countryman Yusuf Nurkić is going to have equality instead of his name, but written in Bosnian. So while Nikolajokic decided not to have. But as you said, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to mean that you don't support the cause. Right. It's just supporting it in another way. One last question before we let you go. How do you keep your sanity working with Shaq, Charles, and all those guys? Because you've said at the beginning of the interview that those are your guys, and you seem to have a lot of fun in that studio, Jay.
Thank you so much. And that's the biggest compliment anybody could pay us, because we want people to laugh with us and have fun with us. You know, we just love it. And I think, you know, and especially now with so much going on in the world, with everyone worrying about their health, worrying about other political issues, you know, this is just basketball. And at the end of the day, it's not that important. But if we can help you laugh and get some enjoyment, that's what we're here for. And we love it. And, you know, it's been the biggest honor of my career to be able to work with guys like Shaq and Charles and Isaiah Thomas, who I know you've had on your show, and so many others. You know, I'm working with Reggie Miller, a Hall of Famer, on Thursday night to do this Lakers and Clippers game. And it's a huge thrill as somebody who grew up as a big basketball fan to not just be in studio and be on camera with these superstars, with these giants of the game, but it's also amazing just to be hanging out with these guys when we're not on television. And everybody, you know, everybody's just a human being, right? And everybody's cool. You know, that's the way to put it. And it's amazing that they've accepted me as a guy who's never an athlete, who's just a big basketball fan and always wanted to work on television talking about sports. It's just really cool. And I appreciate you saying that we have fun, because that's truly our goal each and every night. I really want people to see us and understand how much passion we have, as much passion as you have watching at home. You know, it's important to us to do our job right. And and hopefully entertain you.
Jared, thank you very much for being with us. Keep doing an amazing job as you have up until now. Thanks once again for being on the show.
It's been my pleasure. I love talking hoops. I love talking to you guys, and I hope to do it soon. And I hope you enjoy the restart of the NBA season as much as I will.
We will for sure. Poštovani gledaoci, razgovarali smo sa Jaredom Greenbergom, reporterom i analitičarem na NBA TV-u koji nam se javio direktno iz babla u Orlandu pred restart NBA sezone koja počinje u četvrtak naveče. Ostanite uz program N1 televizije.